song for Collaboration Radio. Welcome today. Hello. This is the intersection of art, activism, and social change. Thank you for joining us at Collaboration Radio on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's Progressive Talk Radio, and also streaming live on Facebook and WCPT.com, or available on demand at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere you get your digital content. I am Darlene Jackson, the CEO, Executive Director of Collaboraction. Collaboraction is a 29-year-old nonprofit whose mission is to build knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action around oppression and inequity through live theater, film, and radio that leverage the power of storytelling and community to cultivate positive social change. Collaboration Radio is sponsored by the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation. Today's episode of Collaboration Radio is also sponsored by the Ruth Page Center for the Arts. The Ruth Page Center for the Arts annual dance festival in honor of the anniversary of its founder's birth, the icon and dance pioneer Ruth Page, is back this March. It's center stage at Ruth Page, March 21st and 22nd at the Ruth Page Center. Stage showcases the incredible talents of the in-residence organizations and dance companies from the Chicago dance community, creating a weekend filled with extraordinary live performances. Tickets went on sale February 7th. Do not miss an unforgettable weekend of dance and artistry at Center Stage at Ruth Page, only at the Ruth Page Center in Chicago's Gold Coast. More information at ruthpage.org. Today's episode is also sponsored by AV Chicago, Chicago's leading provider of AV production and event management services, and Elevoke. Elevoke is a purpose-driven destination and event management company that seeks to become a trusted strategic ally to your business as they delight your audience. Elevoke. And today's episode is also brought to you by Adler University. Adler University with social change and social justice. So, after our show today, if you feel impassioned and you want to join the conversation, Collaboration Radio is made possible by donors and members like you. Email radio@collaboration.org or go to www.collaboration.org to learn more. So as we get started, just want to give you a few Collaboration news and updates. Last week, we were knee-deep in construction and pulled in some chairs and some lights, and we got our groundbreaking going. It was a wonderful event attended by over 70 people in the press and media and community. We also had support from Chicago City Clerk Anna Valencia, who spoke, and also our alderperson, City Council member Jesse Fuentes for the 26th Ward, where Humboldt Park and the new House of Belonging reside. We got coverage, a full page in the Sun-Times. Black Club Chicago also wrote up a really wonderful piece, and New City and ABC7 covered it. So we got a lot of attention, and we're excited about the prospects and what it all means and what it all is going to be about, offering this moment in time to build a cultural hub in Humboldt Park that is based on community, creativity, and connection. And so we're very excited that we were able to host the groundbreaking event in Humboldt Park, so at our new space at the Kimball Arts Center. So can't wait to open for you guys. We'll keep you updated as we get closer to the ribbon cutting and our opening. We also hosted our Black History Month Poetry Slam at the Silver Room. Thank you for partnering with us, Eric Williams and the staff at Silver Room. We had the amazing Mario Smith as host. Leslie Honore was a judge, celebrated poet and author. Sir Taylor and from the Example Setters, also the esteemed, musician and poet Marvin Tate were our judges. We had 7 competitors. We gave out over $1,000 in prizes, and so the winners were very excited and emotional, and it was a beautiful day for community and celebrating. A lot of our board members came out, and so I'm just really happy about that whole vibe, the whole reverence. We talked about Black history in the making. You know, we always tend to look at Black history from a distant lens, but this time we wanted to celebrate Black history of the now, so Black history from 2000 to today, and those poems were on point. So there are going to be a lot of updates on our Instagram and on our socials. So make sure you take a look at that if you want to see some of those captures. We have those poets in totality. So they're poems that some of them, they were just reading. Some of them they were memorized, and so that spoken word, ended with a little bit of a cipher. We had DJ Patricia of Chicago on the decks, who was, providing all of the vibes that day. So it was great. It was a great way to usher in and highlight and get people excited about Black History Month. Even though, some people say it's over, it's never over. All right, so we finished out. We're going to finish out Black History Month with a private screening of our 3-time Emmy-winning Trial in the Delta this Sunday at the Lincoln Park Room. The Lincoln Park Room is a 3-story podcast studio, recording studio, and event space. And that is by invite. And we look forward to re-showing the Trial in the Delta. We did that performance at the DuSable Museum and filmed it, and now it is an amazing 1 hour and 20 minute, I don't know, it's pretty engaging, and we're going to have a crucial conversation after that, and we're going to have a reception, and we are going to have some music by DJ Lady D to wrap the whole thing up. So I'm looking forward to playing for the group and playing for everyone after that, to kind of like lighten the mood. Is pretty heavy, because if you think about what happened and what transpired and what they did, it's not easy, but we're going to try to be reverent. We're going to try to have the discussion and take some actionable steps about what we can do to honor the memory, to make sure something like that never happens again. And I know we're getting in intense times, and so we want to make sure that we are learning from the past and moving forward in the future. Now, I would love to introduce you to today's guest. Here we go. Lori Branch, DJ, activist, and host of the Vintage House Show, WNUR 89.3 FM Evanston, right there on the NU campus. DJ Lori Branch is a Chicago native from the Morgan Park community, seen by many as a pioneer DJ in Chicago's house music scene, and one of, if not the first woman to grace the decks as a house music DJ and promoter. Lori is featured in a number of documentaries right now, one on you can see on WTTW. We'll talk about that a little bit. Magazine articles and television specials. As a house music historian, Lori is the chief creative officer for the Vintage House Show. In this role, she curates the Chicago Home of House exhibit, recently featured at Chicago's Navy Pier. That was a long run. And hosts the Vintage House radio show and podcast, again on WNUR 89.3 FM, Evanston. Vintage House on WNUR is the only on air radio show and podcast in Chicago dedicated to illuminating and preserving the lives, music, and careers of house music legends. VintageHouseShow.com if you want to know more about it. Listen up on Wednesdays on Facebook Live or on YouTube or the Twitch channel that they have, and you can look them up at The Vintage House Show. So DJ Lori Branch, I have a little bit more to say about you, so hold your horses. Oh, no, you've held residencies at at numerous Chicago clubs. You've played opening sets for several recording artists like Michelle and Cello, Lauryn Hill, Arrested Development, Tribe Called Quest. Lori, you've also co-produced music for several independent film projects, in addition to writing and producing television and film projects we'll talk about, such as Kevin's Room, 40th, The Story of Robert's Temple, and the Wrap It Up Chicago series. So you're also a member of the Good Girls.
I am a member of the Good Girls.
There's a DJ collective, yes, along with DJ Hannah Vitti, aka Vitti Girl, and Darlene Jackson, aka DJ Lady D. Finally, Lori, you're a board member of the Modern Dance Music Research and Archiving Foundation. You're also on the advisory board for Honey Pop Performance. You're also a founding member and on the board for the Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus.
Yes.
Anything else?
I need a clone. I never thought about
it. You really do.
All that stuff.
Listen, I had to give you a proper introduction because, we could have you every week probably, but honestly, it's a pleasure for me to be able to interview you twice in 1 month now, and having never interviewed you in all the years that I've known you. So this is an awesome and auspicious occasion for me because I absolutely revere you and absolutely adore you.
The feeling is completely mutual. It's my honor and privilege. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us today. So I'm sorry that if I made you feel a certain way, but I have to give you your flowers because as a woman coming into the dance music industry, I would love for you to recount for us what it was like to get in as a woman at that time in such a male-dominated field, and to really walk that walk as a pioneer, as somebody who broke through those barriers and, overcame those roadblocks and jumped those hurdles to have the longevity of a career as a DJ and producer, and everybody who's anybody in this industry knows who you are and what you mean to Chicago house music and house music at large.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show again. And, this has been a life journey, privilege, honor. I give mad respect to the women who I witnessed DJing. They weren't house music DJs, but they were brave enough to be out there in the early, mid-'70s when I was a baby, coming up in high school, and, seeing those women at some of those early parties that I went to who were doing, mostly R&B and sort of, a little disco here and there, sort of before we were mixing and, doing house music. But, I was certainly not the first woman to be, trying to entertain people on the decks. And so, people like Sharon Webb, who's still she doesn't DJ anymore, but, she's still one of my favorites. So I do give honor to them. We all stand on somebody's shoulders, right?
Absolutely.
I also, you asked a question about sort of what it was like. When you're 17, 18, you're just kind of trying to make it, and I was a college dropout, a house head, going to the warehouse on Saturdays, sort of coming out as a bisexual person and finding my way. And that was, and a music collector. So I was, my friends and I would buy music. We would go, and before we were DJing, we would go to the record stores and we were just collecting all these records. And I have a great friend named Eric Bradshaw, who was a visionary of in his own right, who I went to high school with, and he was a staff member for this newspaper called the New Expression. I don't know if they're still around, but it was a high school newspaper. And he and Chippy is a, iconic house music, father. But they were sort of staff there. Chippy was like 14 and my friend was like 16. And they would see these parties being advertised in this citywide newspaper. And so my friend Eric got the idea, I think we could do this too. You guys collect a lot of music and, he had other friends who were interested. The chosen few DJs were sort of the select DJs at the time who were just starting to do sort of the beginning of house music, where younger people were mixing records. I mean, the idea of sort of having a continuous flow all night was still relatively new in the late 70s, because the mixer was relatively new. And so Eric got the idea to start throwing parties where he would invite, I wasn't part of the group yet, kids from all over. And he had this newspaper, he knew how to do graphic design, and so he was very creative. And if you ever see flyers from back then, like in the early 80s, late 70s, they were all mostly hand drawn.
Yes, they were.
And so he was very creative in sort of using photography and effects and what was popular at the time, iZods and K-Swiss, and sort of integrating the culture, into these flyers to attract people to these parties. And we were great friends, and I would go to his parties. And one day he said, you and John Pierre was one of my buddies, you guys collect all this music, you should consider DJing. You love it so much. We can buy equipment. We can find somebody who knows how to do it to help teach you. And that's kind of how it started. And he said, and there's no other women on our scene. Nobody's doing like this, what we call punk out music. We called it punk out at the time.
I loved punk out.
Well, that was what we put on the flyers, punk out. And what that meant was it was sort of a cross between disco, which was kind of fading in a way,
right,
and new electronic music,
yes,
and actual punk music. Like we were integrating all of that. So we just called it punk out. And so I just started spinning for the group. I learned, in my friend Craig Loftus' basement, we learned together. And Craig has gone on to do many great things. His stage name is Grand High Priest, and he's an amazing producer, award-winning, the whole nine. But we were kids, and so
he's also involved in theater.
And he's also
he does set design.
He's our set designer for the Beverly Arts Center right now. He does everything. I'm minimizing his talents because he does everything. But Craig and I learned from Louis Gomez. His name was Jose. We called him Jose Gomez at the time, but Louis Gomez, who's a great producer. His catalog is amazing.
It is.
If you ever want to check him out. So, I mean, I mention all these people because they are who made me me.
Yes, right.
Like I wouldn't be me unless all those people sort of contributed their time and love and energy and to prop me up and say, you have an interest. We think you might be able to figure this out, And spinning back in 1979, 1980 was very difficult because you had to use live records. You did not have any way to automatically sync the beats. And there wasn't really a lot of beats to sync because you were playing with live drums, and then the electronics sort of made it somewhat easier, but it was not an easy craft. And so you didn't have the glut of DJs that you have now because it was difficult and expensive.
Yes.
So you had to buy equipment, you had to learn, you had to lug around this stuff everywhere you went.
Crates of records,
it
vinyl.
took a village.
Yeah.
It took a village to make Lori Branch. And I'll just say that. And so I was exhausted half the time because we were hustling and promoting and, hanging flyers up at 95th Street and the Dan Ryan in the middle of the night, doing all kinds of illegal things with our handmade posters and stuff we would print. And so it was fun, exhilarating, nerve-wracking, because I was the talent, So suddenly I went from being backstage to front stage, and you had to perform. And I was the only woman for a pretty long time, like on those stages, at least until Celeste Alexander came around, like maybe a year after I did. And then there was a few others, Chris Hutchison and Kenya Lenore and a few others, but shortly afterwards. But, a year is a long time when you're doing it every week somewhere.
Right. That's pretty amazing. I found some synergy in the things that I came along and did in the 90s too, right? So you find that you just start getting into it because you want to DJ, but then you have to do all this marketing stuff.
Absolutely.
that goes with it.
You got people that got to show up.
Yeah, you want people, you don't want to be playing to an empty room.
Right.
So you're doing all this outreach and you are building community. We didn't call it that then, but that's exactly what you're doing. And you let people know that if they came, they would receive a certain experience. And what do you think that experience was that differed from what your counterparts, your male counterparts, were offering?
Well, we consider ourselves fashionable, so we took a lot of time and energy to put into our outfits and, And I was a woman, so I was on all the flyers, and so the guys would, it was.
Spokesmodel.
I'm telling you, it took a village, because I'm kind of a
Yes.
tomboy. They were like, no, you're wearing a skirt. We're going to get a stylist and we're going to do all these things. And so for every shoot, there was like a whole theme. And we even did fashion shows. So we
Wow.
felt like we were kind of like higher class of some sort. Like, if you come to our parties,
Upper echelon.
you're going to get fashion, you're going to get music. We have all the pretty girls.
Love.
So it was pretty exclusive.
Yeah.
And we were bougie intentionally.
Yes, you were curating a more elevated experience.
For teenagers.
Yes, and you know what? And I'm sure they were loving it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think they came ready to play, and we would even rope off little VIP sections, It's like,
Well, you went to Lynn Bloom. I went
did.
to Whitney Young.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some camaraderie, but also a little rivalry. But
for sure.
yeah, and there were definitely parties where, I think in the '80s there was sort of the divergence between house and hip hop, and so hip hop parties were mired in, sort of a little bit of violence, a little bit of, misogyny, a little bit of, homophobia. And so a lot of kids that didn't want to deal with all of that, were seeking out the house parties. So that community was a little bit different, a little bit safer, especially for queer
Absolutely.
people. It was more welcoming, and the environment. Can you talk about why you think that was that intentional? Was it, I know they were learning the culture from the warehouse, Frankie's parties, and sort of seeing how that happened. Why do you think that they, accepted that, or that was attractive to young Black youth who were starting to be enterprising and go around and throw these parties?
I think that it was a sort of a melding pot of a lot of different cultures, and I've heard you talk about this so eloquently, that a lot of these people like myself and Eric and Wayne Williams and Terry Hunter, and the names go on and on about these people who were there, some of whom were gay in the gay community, some of whom were closeted, some of whom were heterosexual, identified as heterosexual guys, who were. The one thing that they all had in common is that they were going to the Mecca. They were going to the warehouse, or they were going to the power plant, or they were going to one of these early clubs that was predominantly for gay people, but they had the most amazing sound systems, the best DJs. Ron Hardy, Frankie Knuckles, Craig Cannon. I mean, the list goes on about these guys who were just really knocking it out the park, and they were older than us. So we kind of looked up to them, and I believe, this is my take on it, that we kind of wanted to emulate that for a younger crowd.
Yeah.
And Wayne Williams talks about this a lot. He saw Ron Hardy spinning at, I think it was the Den on the South Side, and it was the first time he'd ever heard music that was continuous. And he said, this is magic. How is he doing that?
Yeah.
And so he went up there, and Ron was showing him, it's called a mixer, and this is how it works. and he was determined, to follow suit. So some of the guys who are, who identify not in the gay community were still very close to it. They were sort of gay adjacent. And I think the safety that people found in there, and you talk about this, was something that we tried to emulate. That this was a fun place, a safe place. We dressed up for the occasion, and we made people feel welcome.
Yeah, that freedom, that liberation, just seeing that and then modeling that behavior, and then the emulation of it, right? So the reverberation, the ripples that kept going,
Yes.
and they continue to today.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty phenomenal.
And yeah, absolutely. And I do, want to give credit to things that were sort of happening simultaneously. And when we get into the discussion about the warehouse, there's always a debate about there were other places to go, and there were other places to go. But the reason that you hear the warehouse and Ron Hardy and the Music Box and, Robert, why do you hear those year after year after year? Because they were such unique experiences, and they were very long lasting. So you had, these spaces lasted for years. The warehouse was like 5 years, which is a long life for like a club.
Yeah.
Especially ones that are it's one night a week.
Yeah.
And that's all you get. So
Wow.
Yeah, there was some sustaining energy that I think reverberated for many years afterwards, and did help inform some of these smaller places where people gathered.
So this is, awesome discussion. For people who don't know, what house music is, or, obviously you can chat GPT it because,
Yes, look it up.
yeah, look it up. I don't want to sit here and, have a discussion about house music, but,
Yes.
essentially it's sort of a disco's revenge,
Absolutely.
when they had the disco demolition and kind of killed it off or thought they were, it simply resurfaced as something else and something even more powerful, as
Yes.
something even more far reaching. And so, that's what happens when you try to kill off things. They literally come back stronger and harder. And so, if you are listening out there in the world, this is Collaboraction Radio, and we are in the discussion today with Lori Branch, a DJ, an activist, a historian. Tell me a little bit about, like you really are an historian, an archivist, and tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in that space because, like I said initially, you just had a wonderful exhibit that ran for months at Navy Pier. You've done prior experience exhibits in other spaces. So tell me about like these exhibits have mainly been about the history of house music and creating a timeline that's visual that people can see and what is that process like, and then how where do you see going from here, from the things that you've done so far?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. I was there in the beginning, and so I do feel that there's some responsibility to ensure that the story is told correctly. There's a lot of folks who make claim to house music, and there were certainly elements of what became house music happening all around the world. But Chicago has a unique place because we coined the phrase. We were there for a moment in time that was unlike any other in Chicago, one of the most segregated cities in the world, where you had these bridges from the gay community, the straight community, the 30-somethings to the teens, the parties that were underground, and while we had honestly shifting politics and a national level, you had Reagan. And like you said, when things start to be suppressed, other things come up. And house music came up in that environment. And also we had a black mayor, Harold Washington, right in the mix of it. So I feel like it was a perfect storm for this genre to be created in Chicago. And so the reason that I'm very keen to keep telling that story is that it gets diffused. And like anything in Black culture, in Black community, it's easily taken away. It's distorted. It's given credit to someone else. And often the people who were there in the beginning get left behind. Look at any genre. Look at blues, look at jazz, look at so many things where those originators, now we're like desperate to find the original recordings because they've been lost or they've been distorted. Those people are dead. They died broke. How many stories have we heard like that?
It's a never-ending story.
It is a never-ending story. And I think house music is important because it has fueled electronic dance music, which is all around the world, where the people who were not there in the beginning, who are still alive and still playing it, it's 45 years in, but those people, many of them, were 15. So they're still trying to make a living doing that. Yet they're not headlining these things. And there are folks who've come out of Chicago who are doing quite well. So, I'll give them props. But we still have been usurped by a larger culture and not given credit and often lied about. You know what I mean? Like, how many stories you've heard where this started in London or this started in somewhere else? And it's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I don't think people are mean-spirited. I think they're just misled. And so my purpose for doing house music history through the podcast, the radio show, interviewing people, collecting stories, collecting artifacts, exhibiting those, is to preserve the history. Preserve the history for many people to come. And there is a level of scholarship around that's being taught in schools. I can't tell you how many students I talk to who are studying this and truly trying to understand the roots of it because they are moved by it. They're 22 years old saying, I'm so glad I discovered this. Like I found myself in a way.
Right.
And they're interested in the history of it. And I do that for them. I do it for my own child. I do it for your children. I do it
Yes.
for generations to come to know that your city is important, your family is important. Black people are important because they created a genre that has gone around the world and back.
That's right. And this is every year, not just Black History Month. I think it's interesting that you talked about Harold Washington because that was very central to that time. And he was known as a coalition builder.
Yes.
And house music is all about building coalition. It is about unity and, non-discrimination, non-discriminatory practices.
Yes.
I don't think that that's a coincidence. I love, that it was this perfect storm that sort of created that. And I think we have to be louder about what we do. And I think preserving that history that you're doing right now, that, the archivists that you work with are also committed to doing is uber important. One of the things that Honey Pot Performance does is with the Omeka website and the preserving of the Black social
Absolutely.
cultural map. I love that project, and because it's a digital form, right? So it's hard to destroy, things that are off paper, right?
Yes.
So I like that, these things are going to be preserved in perpetuity. And I would love to see a bigger exhibit each and every year that we keep adding to.
It will grow.
Right? Because, the one thing about starting an exhibit like that is the criticism that comes with it. Like, oh, you didn't do this right, or you left so-and-so off. And how do you deal with that a little bit? Because people are pretty critical these days. And there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that can't wait to tell you just how bad your thing is.
Well, you're not doing it right if you don't get criticism. So I expect it. We embrace it. We give people opportunities. The exhibit that we had, and I want to give some credit to Rob McKay, Reggie Corner, Robert Williams, many of those folks it was their initial idea to do this exhibit at the Cultural Center way back in 2017, 16, somewhere around there. And so Rob and I and Lauren Lowry and Kevin McFall, who are my partners with the Vintage House Show, we got together in 2019 to say, let's recreate the exhibit. And Rob was gracious to partner with us to say, we want to bring you in. Help us with this timeline. You've interviewed hundreds of people. Help us to tell the story better. So we became partners, and we launched that exhibit at the Epiphany Center for the Arts, and most recently at Navy Pier, where we did have a long run from May to December.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. So that we're still in the beginning.
Yeah.
This exhibit has already taken on a life of its own. We're negotiating with multiple places right now to figure out sort of what's the next step for it. Because we want to include artifacts. We want to include the ephemera, from people's houses and the articles. And, there's so much that we have, like just collecting dust, that is going to be so valuable for people to really understand and really just feel like what it was like to be there in the beginning. And so we're committed to that.
Yeah, I love that we are finally kind of on that page. There's a museum of house in the Netherlands, a house music museum. Like, how do they have one before we do? So,
I don't know.
So we've definitely have our work cut out for us. Yes. We are finally getting some of the love from the city. We now have another black mayor, which since Harold Washington we have not had, and I believe that every mayor kind of has had their sort of commitment to the arts, and I hope that we maintain that because that's important. DK's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, they do a lot of supporting of house music events now these days, and that wasn't always the case.
Yes.
I think it's so important for the municipality to really
100%.
to be creating that infrastructure that supports us. Detroit does it with the Movement Festival,
Absolutely.
And there are other festivals, I think that we should lobby Lollapalooza to have more house music, or to have a specific house music stage. I
Yes.
think that it would grow. And so maybe some of these, entities that are coming into our space should, make way for these creators. I think that would be an intentional thing that they could do that shows that they want to sort of rectify the situation that has happened. Like you said, like dance music is $1 billion industry, much of it, coming from us and our creators, and these originators are, sometimes struggling to pay their bills.
100% agree. And just, we have had a couple of black mayors, so I just want to, we had Eugene Sawyer
We
and
did
Lori
have
Lightfoot.
Sawyer, and you're so right. What am I thinking? You're right. I don't know why I said that. I've been thinking about Daley and Ram a lot, and
Yeah.
I think, and where we are.
Yeah, I think I will say that our current mayor is a househead.
Yes, he
And,
is.
we've seen him at a few events. He's so supportive of the community. I know Farley Jackmaster Funk is like his favorite DJ, and
Yes.
he's always supporting him and shouting him out. So we appreciate
I've
that.
played a few events where he's been,
Yes,
and
me
he's
too.
spoken, and so
Yeah,
I played
he's great.
some fundraisers for him. So I definitely support him as a candidate and also as our mayor. And
Yes.
so I think that, that it will continue, but I just want to put that out there because
Come on
you got to
now.
say it.
And I will say, we are hopefully keeping our fingers crossed that we're having conversation with ArcFest. So is it possible that we may be there? Lollapalooza, that would be awesome. So we'll see. We're definitely moving in that direction to try to make things, have the exhibit such that it can be malleable, that we can take it in different places. It's a hard job to do an exhibit. People don't realize how much goes
Absolutely.
into that. And, just keeping it up and guarding it. And, there's just a lot to it. But
Yeah, storage.
but I'm committed to it,
Yeah.
And it's a labor of love. We're all doing this, sort of as a labor of love.
Right.
None of us get paid to do this stuff.
I'll let you do a little plug right now. If people wanted to, provide archival materials or
Yes.
support you financially for that endeavor, how would they do that?
So you can certainly hit us up on The Vintage House Show, which is, we have an Instagram, we have a website, so it'd be easily to do that. I also have my own, IG page, DJ Lori Branch. Hit me up. I talk to people all day about ideas and have taken contributions to other programs that way. So would love to hear from you. So there's many ways to reach out, but if you want to just start with me, that's fine. At DJ Lori Branch, you hit me up on Instagram, or The Vintage House Show. We have a website and we have IG page, Facebook, all different kinds of ways to reach out to us.
Yeah, so you're online every Wednesday live.
We are online every Wednesday live at WNUR.org. You can stream it live. You can watch us on Facebook. We're on lots of different channels, Twitch, YouTube,
Yeah.
etc. It's The Vintage House Show.
And you've for 10 years now, you've been
This is our 10-year
preserving
anniversary.
people's histories.
Yes, so important because so many of those people are no longer here. I can name 5 of our guests who have passed away since we started doing the show. And the first of which was Terry Bristol. She was an amazing DJ. She was the resident DJ for Medusa's, Dave Shelton's club on Sheffield. And she and Psycho Bitch, Valerie Shane.
That's her name. That's it's Psycho B.
Psycho B. They were the resident DJs. And I remember when I saw them first, I think it was 82, 83, I was so excited because it was like this pair of women who were like banging it out, at Medusa's, which was a fantastic, another juice bar,
Yeah.
after hours type place. But Terry was like the first interview that I did on WNUR. And she passed away a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and I was so mad we didn't record the interview. So
And you weren't even thinking about
we
that
weren't thinking
at
about
that
it because it was
time.
the first show. It was like, we're just excited to get on the radio and like talk to each other. And I was like, hey, Terry. But so many others, including Craig Cannon and Daryl. There's so many folks. So I don't
Yeah.
want to get into names because I'll
Right.
get emotional. But many people have passed away. And so their stories are so important. And I am working with another very talented person, one of our good girls, Hannah Viti,
Yes.
who's a podcaster herself and a DJ, and she's helping me to better preserve what we have already. So more to come on
Fantastic.
the podcast. So listen up.
Yeah, I think a lot of those stories would make good stories.
Yes.
And you are a filmmaker as well.
Yes.
So tell us about some of the filmmaking things that you've been involved in. And I know specifically, I always, I've asked you before, or just recently, about the connection between gospel music and house music, and gospel coming from Chicago as well. And you did a wonderful documentary. Tell us a little bit about your filmmaking role, and the pieces that you're most proud of, and maybe how you're going to continue your legacy in that space.
Sure. I mean, of course, everything evolves from somewhere, and that started back in college. I went to Columbia College. I graduated in 1988, but half of my friends were filmmakers. They would film in my apartment, and so I was exposed to it early on, and I was like, eventually I want to get into that. And, I had a few classes here and there. But when I was living in New York for a while, I did, some music there, but mostly I was just kind of trying to find my way. And I moved back to Chicago after New York and LA, being exposed to. In LA, my girlfriend at the time was a casting director, and so I was always around the arts in that way. And I'm like, I really want to get into it. And I got a lucky break because I started working in the HIV field, and I was like trying to think of creative ways to educate people. And there's CAN TV, which we had a little show, like a hotline show. And I was like, well, I want to go on the hotline show. And we got to talk to the students that I would see every day, and they'd call the show, hey, Miss Branch, and I'd get to answer questions live. And I really got bit by that bug. And I'm like, well, I want to do shows in the studio. And so then we created a show called Wrap It Up, which was later emulated by BET. One of our interns went to work for them, took the whole idea. That's a whole story.
Oh, wow.
But, but it was a show that integrated what I was doing at the time, which was hip hop music, dancing, with positive messages. We would give out free condoms on the air. We had all these special guests. Ryan Fest was a kid. He was on one of our first shows. I mean, seriously, it was like
so Chicago.
It was so cool.
Shy.
It was so cool.
Love it.
And that evolved until I wanted to do bigger and more projects, and I started doing things that would connect the arts to my activism, which at the time I was doing a lot of work in HIV. Many of my friends had passed away. Those same kids I was hanging out with at the warehouse, gone, dead. Most of them by the early 90s were dead. And so my heart was always breaking. And I'm like, and so it was a way for me to exercise, some of that stuff is to make projects in dedication. And one of the first the first, drama that I worked on, that I developed to help co-write, and then I produced it, and it was directed by Black Cat Films, was a film called Kevin's Room. And this was, I was working at the health department at the time, and we were spending a lot of money on billboards, which are up and down in 6 weeks. And I was like, how do we create something that's somewhat evergreen, that at least we get some years worth. And we did focus groups, and people were like, do a film. And so we did this film, Kevin's Room, which turned into a 3-part series over the course of 5 years. And it was dedicated to 2 of my friends named Kevin, both of whom passed away within 2 years of each other in their 20s of HIV. And so I was sort of invoking, our memories and our stories into the storyline of that. But you can actually see the Kevin's Room series. It's on YouTube. There's 3 parts. There's 60-minute shows. And it's pretty cool. You can kind of see
some awards for that, right?
We've won a couple of awards for Kevin's Room,
Yeah.
And we did film festivals all over the world. It was really kind of a cool period. That was where it started.
Well, that's a change-making kind of thing, because at the time, it was sort of this policy of deny. It's not happening. And it took a few brave souls to punch through that and try to educate the public.
Especially about gay Black men, because they were like the pariahs in the community. And I hate to put it that way, but it was like people were, down low, and all this talk about, just these men who were out there. And I work in public health. I mean, we can go down that path, but they weren't doing anything that anybody else wasn't doing. Dating, finding love, living their lives. And unfortunately, this virus crept in and was insidious and started taking people out left and right in all the communities, but really hit hard in the Black gay community. And so my purpose in creating Kevin's Room was to give a face, to make 3-dimensional characters, not caricatures, 3-dimensional people, who were fully fleshed out in their stories. And so it's a story about a social worker who was just trying to have a support group. And he pulls these men in from different lives. a closeted gay man who's about to get married, and he's a church guy, and another dude who's sort of on the DL, and then sort of a very openly gay man, who's out there.
Really relatable stories.
All these great guys, who had these really interesting lives, and you find out, we sort of explore all of their lives in the series. And it was the first, showing that film, this was before Will and Grace, it was before Noah's Ark, it was before any of those things.
Yes.
And we were able to work with I'm sorry, I'm blanking, Channel 50 at the time.
Oh, yes.
To work really closely with us to say, this is important, we're going to air this commercial free at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. And they did that, and we had huge ratings for the film. We had viewing parties all over. People were literally crying because they'd never seen positive images of men in love and loving each other and supporting each other that way without it being the butt of a joke or without it being like the sissy, who's like the hairdresser or whatever. It's like these are fully fleshed out characters.
Right.
Nothing wrong with sissies who are hairdressers. I know some of them too. Yeah. But I'm just saying.
Right.
These were, it was important. And I remember this one woman saying, I showed it to my mom, and she was like, gay men are just people. And she felt like that was revolutionary to hear her mom, who was homophobic at the time, say that. Like, everybody's just people.
Yeah.
So when you can
the power
recognize
of storytelling, changing hearts and
absolutely.
minds. That's the bottom line.
Right. Not every, people are marginalized because we marginalize them.
And your personal experiences, informed your ability to be able to
100%.
Bring these stories to life.
Yeah.
And so, that's the moral of the story is, get out and live a little and get to know folks and, don't, what are you protecting yourself from?
Well, when you know people, it's harder to hate them.
Yes.
And so filmmaking gives you an opportunity to know people in a different way. It's so important for us to have those images out there for us.
Absolutely. I would say the work that you did in that, did that spur you to help bring about the Chicago Black Men's Gay Caucus?
Yeah, the Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus, is an organization that's dedicated to improving the health and well-being of Black gay men. Of course, we work with our allies. I am not a Black gay man, but I am I'm honorary. But I'm on the board of directors. Dr. Keith Green is our CEO and our executive director, and we just have an amazing organization that's our mission, is that we try to bridge the divide that is in the community and help keep this community healthy.
Yeah, so important. I've been to a few of the events.
Yes.
Do you have something coming up?
We always have something coming up. You can look up Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus. We have a website.
Yeah.
If it's not you, maybe it's good for your nephew or your son or your brother. People new to Chicago often go to our website and they find ways to engage the community in healthy, respectful ways. We do all kinds of stuff. We have wellness groups. We do like theater outings. And then we have one big event called Love Fest. And that's every year where we integrate health messaging, but we also have agencies from around the city who come and provide free services to the participants. And so that happens once a year. It's usually pretty crowded outside in a park somewhere.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. So is there anything that we haven't talked about or touched on?
Well, one thing I'll mention, I know where time is running fast.
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is you talked a little bit about your project with Emmett Till, and I'm so proud that Collaboraction has done that. I highly encourage people to really dig into that story. As you know, I have a personal connection to the story through the church where the funeral was held and his body was laid bare for people to see is my family's church. It's literally my great-grandfather founded that church in the early part, of the last century, and it's been there for 100 years. But it was one of Chicago's first mega churches, and that church was very intentionally selected, for that reason. Emmett Till's grandmother was a member of that church. His family would come to the church, and they wanted, it was sort of the center of Bronzeville at the time, in 1955. And the decision to have that open casket funeral made the difference between him being not just another little boy that went missing and got killed and was buried in the South. And his mom, Mamie Till Mobley, was just this amazing Renaissance woman who understood how to utilize the media, how to utilize the press, how to utilize her intelligence and her eloquence, to articulate the depravity of this country and the South. And it stirred so many hearts and minds. They talk about that Rosa Parks had in her mind, Emmett Till, because that had just happened. When she was put up to not giving up her seat, it gave her the power to sit there. And it gave so many people power. That was the media. But it was also, the courage of those people who put their lives at risk to even do something that bold. So I'm really excited that y'all are doing the project, and I really encourage people to really better understand the significance of his death and the activism around that and what happened in that courtroom, and the travesty that was America back then.
Right. And the ability to let something fuel you to a higher purpose.
Absolutely.
Like, don't be afraid of that feeling. Lean in.
Well, when it taps you, you can't avoid it. And that's what I think is the beauty of activism, is that we kind of sit back, and now is not the time to sit back, especially now with what's going on, this sort of government takeover and the craziness that's happening, so that we can, I'm sorry, get political, but so that we can raise $4 trillion so billionaires can have tax cuts. That's what this is all about.
Yes.
All about stripping away your resources so billionaires can have tax cuts. This is what this whole charade is about, people. That's what it is. I don't care what your affiliation is.
Right.
That's what this is happening. And they've already told you that's why it's happening. So now is not the time to sit back. And getting out there, putting your life, your family's, think of your family and friends, putting them in your heart and mind. When you step out to take a risk like that, you can never go back. Once that's in you, you become that activist.
You really do.
Everybody has the potential to do that.
That's right. The spirit of volunteerism, wherever it comes from, once you get it, you're always seeking it, or you're always open to giving. So, listen, Lori Branch, it's been my pleasure to have you on the show today.
My pleasure.
I think that we might be having a phone call from Anthony. Okay, so, this is... To wrap this up, I want to say that this is our 75th show.
Wow.
And this is going to be our last show for a moment. And we have a special caller.
Hey, hi, Darlene.
Hey, Anthony Mosley, our artistic director for Collaboraction.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Anthony.
What a great show. And what an amazing way to end it with, sharing Lori's connection to the church where Emmett's funeral took place, and you two having an amazing conversation here on our 75th show at the end of Black History Month 2025.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So you have some exciting updates about the future of Collaboration Radio.
I do. We're going to take a little break. We did 75 shows. We've been going for nearly a year and a half straight, and we're going to be announcing the next era of digital content as we build our house of belonging in Humboldt Park. So be on the lookout. In a couple weeks, we're going to roll that out, but we're going to continue to evolve and inspire knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action around our most critical issues, and the dialogue and action are needed now more than ever. And so we got some stuff coming out, don't we, Darlene?
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Keep tuned in to this channel and this page and our YouTube and our Instagram, and you will definitely be in the know.
And we have 74 additional amazing episodes to go check out. In the meantime, with the guests we've had and the conversations, I'm just, what an honor to be. I was a part of about 60 of them, and I learned so much, and I'm just grateful for everybody that made it happen, especially the team over there at WCPT Thank you, Paul, for all your help. Thank you, Henry. Can you hear me, Henry?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you for everything. Thank you all our sponsors and listeners, and you know, let's continue to all come together to work together to make Chicago the great city that it is and will be.
That's right. So that was great. You can catch us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Collaboraction's Facebook page if you want to dive back into those episodes. I want to thank again our guest today, Lori Branch. You can find her on socials, sometimes at DJ Lori Branch. And I just want to thank you all for listening in today and joining us. Have a great week.